Excel accounting practice problem, create accounting worksheet part number 7. Get ready because we're about to excel with Excel. Here we are in our Excel worksheet. In prior presentations, we've been putting this Excel worksheet together from scratch from a fresh Excel worksheet. We're going to be continuing in that process. If you have access to this Excel workbook, there'll be 2 tabs on down below, example tab and the practice tab. Example tab in essence being an answer key. Let's take a look at it now. If I go all the way to the left, we have our information which we first started with, the data input field where we're going to put the transactions in place, the debits and the credits. We'll post them then to the trial balance that we created, as well as then to the general ledger. The general ledger is going to be huge because we want to give enough space for us to then enter the detail as activity is done. Then we created an accounts receivable subsidiary ledger, this supporting the information on the accounts receivable, not by date of transaction, but rather by customer. We're going to do the same kind of process now with the accounts payable subsidiary ledger, this breaking out the accounts payable number, not by date of transaction, but by vendor who we owe the money to. So we're going to go back to the practice tab. And I'm going to go all the way to the left just so we can see where we are. Here's the same process on the left where we started with the journal entries. Now we're looking at this item here. We're looking at that accounts payable. We want to break that out. We already have the detail that would be in the GL, breaking it out by date, but we also want to break it out by who we owe the money to. So I'm going to go to the right, and so notice it's going to be way over here to the right. But we're going to be able to hide some cells now to make this a little bit easier on us to do. The format will be looking much like the accounts receivable subsidiary ledger, so we can in essence copy that over. So what I'd like to do then is hide the cells from AW all the way to the trial balance to get those out of the way so we can see the trial balance as we work. So I'm going to put my cursor on AW, scroll all the way over till we get to the trial balance. There's the trial balance. Let go. We're going to right click on that selected area if it lets me do so and hide that stuff. So then what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, this is supporting the accounts receivable, which is up top. Now I'm going to copy this over to support the accounts payable, selecting the little skinny column and going on over to BE, Control C. Then I'm going to put my cursor on BF and Control V, pasting it on down. So there we have our information. I'm going to delete this item up top, and I'm going to delete this for now. And then it's going to be called the accounts payable subsidiary ledger because the general ledger is basically the primary ledger. This is going to be subsidiary to it in that it's organizing the data that had been entered in the order of date in the GL general ledger in a separate order or a different order, reorganizing by, in this case, it will be vendors, people that we owe money to. So I'm going to call it accounts payable subsidiary ledger. Remember, if you work in the accounts payable department, you might sort this information even further, like an accounts receivable or accounts payable aging report, say how old the data is. You might call this something else like a accounts payable by vendor report or something like that. But it is in essence breaking out the same stuff in a different format by vendor, and subsidiary ledger is basically a good term for that. So there we have it. We have the subsidiary ledger. We're going to make this orange, kind of the Halloween color. It's Halloween over. It's getting close, so it's like the fall colors. So we're going to make this orange and orange, selecting customer. Let's make these vendors, by the way. This should be vendor, not customer. Vendor. These are obviously very generic names. Vendor, 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 vendor. I'm going to make the vendor 2 on down below here. Vendor number 2. Then we'll put up here vendor number 3. Vendor number 3. And then vendor number 4. So those are the names of our vendors. But obviously they would have real names, whoever we're purchasing from and whatnot. So now I'm going to select these and this one and make that our festive orange on orange color, the fall colors, by going to the home page font group bucket drop down. We're going to go to the dark orange, this one, and then I'm going to go to the lettering and we'll choose the light orange lettering. Looks wonderful. And then I'm just going to copy that formatting, take in that format, use the Format Painter, brush that right there, Format Painter, brush that right there, Format Painter, brush it right there. There we have it. Now I'm going to basically make up the beginning balance numbers that need to be tying out to what's on the trial balance as well as the GL, which is going to be that 1,600. So I'm going to break this out as if we're entering the data for our beginning balances by vendor. So I'm going to start with zeros here because we pulled over that information was pulling over from when we copied it. So then I'm gonna say it's got to add up to 1,600. So I'm gonna say like negative 700, let's say, and then 2 on the second one. Let's actually make this one number 2 down here. Let's make this negative 600, and then on the third one, let's make this negative 300. And I believe adding those up should add up to the 1,600. Then we'll do our check figure up top. So I want to put my data here so I can sum up this information up top. So I'm going to say this equals the 700. Make sure it's at the bottom here, so the total. So when I change it, it'll always pull up the total at the bottom. Plus this one, the 600, plus the 300, plus the 100. There's nothing there yet, but we're going to possibly add data to that vendor in the future. And so there we got the 1,600 matching out here. We would also like to have a check figure, that green item here, green meaning it should be 0. If it goes less than 0 or less than -1, rounding error being accounted for, then it'll turn red. If it goes greater than 1, it'll turn red. If it's between -1 and 1, it will stay green. Same formatting because we copied the formatting from here over to here, so it should still apply. This is going to be equal to the 1,006 minus the 1,006. And so there we have that. So now we've got this subsidiary ledger supporting the accounts payable. So if someone was to ask us then, what's the accounts payable mean? That means we owe people money. We owe vendors money. Then if they want to know who we owe so that we can then pay them at some point in time, then we need the subsidiary ledger. The next thing they might ask is, well, how old are the outstanding balances and so on and so forth. That gets a little bit more difficult to calculate. We could then work the reports a little bit differently, which is more difficult to do in Excel than it is like in a database program where you could shuffle the numbers around a little bit more easily, but that's the idea. So then that's what we got. Let's unhide the cells now. So I'm going to put my cursor on column I and drag on over to AY, I to AY. Right click on that selected area and unhide that selected area, unhide. There we have it. So now we've got this whole item listed out. The next thing we'll do is we got a subsidiary ledger for the inventory as well. That's going to look a little bit different because the inventory is here by dollar. We also want to know what those dollars constitute in terms of inventory type that we have on file as well. So that's going to be the next item that will require, in essence, another kind of ledger.